Let's next go to the team that I think has also been a huge winner this cycle, and that is the Atlanta Hawks. I have absolutely loved what the Atlanta Hawks have done this summer. And I think that you and I and Bryce, we've talked about the Eastern Conference feeling like a group of four, right? We felt like the Knicks, the Cavs, probably Orlando in some respect, maybe like one other team would kind of fit into that next year. Boston being down, not really having a starting center right now without Jason Tatum as well is a huge issue. The Indiana Pacers being without Tyrese Halliburton feels like an issue. Milwaukee Bucks being without Damian Lillard feels like an issue. The Detroit Pistons, we'll talk about them in a minute. I'm really interested to see how they kind of structure their offseason. I think that their signing of Karis LeVert was kind of smart in the way that they structured that, at least. I think I would have Atlanta as a clear top four team right now for next season in the Eastern Conference following their moves. I love that they've gone out, used the number 22 overall pick to essentially acquire Kristaps Porzingis, but also in that process, set themselves up for the future by getting rid of the Terrence Mann money, which was not money that people were excited to have. He had 3 years, $46 million left on his deal. By advantaging the Brooklyn Nets to take that deal with the number 22 overall pick and then bringing back Porzingis, we'll see if Porzingis can be healthy. We'll see if he can get through a full season. He's a valuable player for them. At the very least, like, he will be useful, but because they already have Onyeka Okongwu, they don't really desperately need him either. They were in a really positive position to take a risk on Kristaps, especially whenever you have Onyeka there and you're getting off the Terrence Mann money as well to begin with. Then they do the deal of all deals, trading number 13 for an unprotected New Orleans Pelicans pick that, I would probably have as a top 5 projection for next year right now. Then today they go out and they sign Luke Kennard, 1 year, $11 million. But more than that, they go out and they get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 4 years, $62 million, which I believe actually does fit into the mid-level exception to start, especially whenever you consider for raises. They have structured this as a sign and trade, and I would imagine that sign and trade is going to fit. I mean, here's the crazy thing, Andrew, because they have structured this the way they've structured this deal, they can fit Nickeil either into their mid-level exception as a sign and trade, or if they can, and they can do that, fit him into the mid-level exception. And then if they can find something in the next couple of days that allows them to utilize the $25 million trade exception that they still have, they could do both. They could go out and they could get a really, really awesome player. But given the fact that they have Kennard, they actually can't do that. I lied. So they've done this. They've done this the right way. Never mind. They've put Nickeil Alexander-Walker into the $25 million trade exception. My brain works. I promise. And then they've signed Luke Kennard to the mid-level. Regardless, home run offseason from Atlanta so far. Anssi Salah, their new general manager, I think he might be awesome at this. He might be genuinely great at this. The way that they have structured this entire offseason to be able to go and get, this could be fun too. So Mark Deeks apparently said they structured LeVert as a sign and trade and created a trade exception, which was used for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. That's interesting. They could do that. That is interesting. But the key is that when does all of this run out? You need to find the timing. It might make more sense to keep that trade exception for the full year as opposed to the $25 million one that runs out a little bit sooner. There's a lot of, they'll have to make decisions on how they use their trade exceptions here. But again, I say all this to say, Anssi Salah is a big reason why they have these trade exceptions to begin with. But the way that they've balanced flexibility, the future, getting off the man money, getting the top 5 potential pick from the New Orleans Pelicans, but also like the ability to go out and win now. This is an unbelievable offseason to me.
So, as one of the other teams in contention for said Eastern Conference that struggled a little bit, that watched their team struggle a little bit with the Hawks, with some of the length that they have, as much as I will continue to remind people that especially anytime I'm told that Trae Young owns the Knicks, that he's 11-19 in his career against the New York Knicks. And that's including said 5-game series in which Julius Randle turned into a pumpkin and should more be the reason why people evaluate said series. I'm annoyed how much I love what the Hawks have done this offseason. And we talked about this a week ago, Sam, when we were just evaluating the Porzingis trade, and giving Trae a pure 5-out look when Dyson Daniels isn't on the floor makes them a scary offense. And now you add Alexander Walker. And this is honestly, to your point about that they might be good at this. This is something I always appreciate when teams do this. And there's a lot of good teams. Honestly, I thought Nico Harrison was doing this last year until he traded Luka. But when you clearly recognize who's the centerpiece, who's the core guy that you need to inform all of your decisions after you've identified that, and you build around it. And around Trae, you have all these wings, you have pick and roll partners, you have defense. If you want to go certain looks where it's kind of hiding him, you can. If you have looks where you want to go 5 out, you can. And then you add in the take advantage of New Orleans. I suggest every team just do that, by the way. Take advantage of New Orleans. Add that to part of your offseason calculation or just front office calculation. Like the fact they were able to do that. And I'll just say this, Sam, twice in the last calendar year to 2 different versions of New Orleans, because let's not forget about the DeJounte Murray trade. Now you do this and you have what's currently on the roster with Alexander Walker. I hate how much I like the Hawks objectively. They are a team that, to your point, should absolutely be considered a top 4 contender. And then look, playoffs are a different conversation. But man, I was thinking this last year when the Knicks lost to them in the in-season tournament. I was thinking this last year just watching when they would, especially if Dyson Daniels is able to take some type of leap as a shooter. And then who knows what happens with Reese Shea in another year into his career. This is clearly a well-run team that is putting a perfect team together around Trae Young. And I hate that I have to give them that credit because it's objectively a very good offseason for them.
Yeah, and to be clear, LeVert is not a sign and trade. It's only a 2-year deal. So you can't sign and trade if it's only a 2-year deal. That's just not something that is like legal. So if Deke said that, he's incorrect, unfortunately. So I checked with John on that. John is smarter at this than I am. John is very good at front office things.
Shout out,
I love
John.
Hollinger. I need to get Hollinger back on the show. I love John. Anyway, Atlanta veteran, and I believe John lives in Atlanta at least a decent amount of time throughout the year. This roster is just really fun. It is Trae Young. I'm going to have to expand it a little bit. It's a little too small.
Yeah.
Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Rissache, Jalen Johnson, Kristaps Porzingis, and Yeka Okongwu, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard is your top 8. That is a sick top 8. That's a top 8 that's flexible. That's a top 8 that allows you to go big and small. That's a top 8 that is awesome on defense and insulates Trae Young. You might want one more ball handler. I think that's probably what they're envisioning with Kennard and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels, that they might be able to get away with, kind of making it work with those 3, plus maybe Jalen Johnson leading the bench unit, right? And then you have whatever Kobe Buffkin is. Like Kobe Buffkin, I loved him pre-draft. He just has gotten so snake bitten with injuries that it's a shame that we haven't gotten a chance to see what he is. But he was always like a really interesting, flexible, intriguing player, I thought. And I guess like Krejci is also like a ball handler in some respect too. I wonder if they just have enough to get by in moments where Trae Young is off the court with their ball handling. I wonder if they have just enough 1.5s. You know what I mean? Guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who played point guard at Virginia Tech, Luke Kennard, who can handle the ball here and there, Dyson Daniels, who came up as a point guard here in Australia, Jalen Johnson being a guy who can run the break. I don't know. They might have enough. I'd probably want one more ball handler. Do you know who this spot might make sense for, Andrew?
Who?
I can't believe I'm going to say this.
Who?
I think it makes sense for Campaign.
Hey, once a Nick. I thought you were going Russell Westbrook with that. But
I think it makes
he would
sense
sign for that money. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this might be like a good third guard. I don't know if you want like a Russ who's going to come in and be like domineering in that way, but I do think if you want like a guy who can run the show a little bit, I think Campaign would be an interesting one. Both of the Joneses are off the table already. Something like that, I think would be useful.
Like, depending on how many minutes you want to dedicate to your 9th, 10th man in this situation, I agree with you that Alexander Walker, Kennard, and to Shane's point, Cole Anthony
would be a good name here too. I think
that's an option. I personally want all second units to be run by Jalen Johnson. So that's to your point about Campaign. He can play off of your quote unquote second best player, but is largely the focus of your second unit. I was just looking up the Trae Young career minutes and what he's like normally logging. Last 2 years each, he logs 36 minutes a game. So if you're doing the math there, you're looking for 12 to 15 minutes, which is the perfect Campaign role. And he can play with Trae in certain lineups if you need to, because he can play off ball, shot the hell out of the ball for the Knicks. And look, I repeat, this is a team that has many options on top of what they've already done that makes them, I don't know about winning the East, but I would stare at odds if you gave them to me. That they've put together a really good team for next season. It wouldn't shock me. Whenever we do over-unders going into next year, Sam, I would just like to preemptively take the Hawks over.
I absolutely just Googled to see if we have any win total over-unders yet. We don't. Them or Orlando heading into the year next year?
Ooh. Well, to your point, that's my 3-4 right now, but I just don't know the order yet. I would probably say Orlando, but I'm not stern in my projection of that it's like, it's Orlando, of course. Like if you told me Atlanta finished third ahead of Orlando, I wouldn't, I could see that reality. Absolutely. What about you?
Close, really close for me. I think I would go Orlando still. I think that they need to have like Franz and Paulo take like one more like mini jump each, right? And I also think that Atlanta just has a few more injury guys that worry me a little bit more, like Porzingis, right? And like they're hoping that Kobe Buffkin might be able to be like a 9th man. You know, Jalen Johnson has struggled to stay healthy, you know, the last couple of years for a full year, right? I think I would go Orlando, but it's close to me. It is close. And look, this Atlanta team, if you remember, I talked a lot about them throughout the year as a team you don't really want to play in the playoffs. Like I kind of said, like with the Knicks, like I would not want to play Atlanta in the playoffs, particularly was one team that I was worried about for New York. I think that stands still. Like they went out and they got playoff guys. Like Kristaps allows you to play 5 out, which is a thing that you need, a look that you need in the playoffs. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a playoff guy. I think Zachary Ricochet at some point is going to be a playoff guy. He just needs to get a little bit stronger, right? I like that they've valued players that play up in the biggest moments as well. And this is the final point here. All of what they have done over the last week, and Milwaukee fans will be annoyed by this. A whole lot of other people will be annoyed by this. I think that they have positioned themselves better for Giannis than any other team in the league. And the reason that I say that is that they now own Milwaukee's 2026 first rounder. If Milwaukee wants to trade Giannis, they probably want their own pick back. Atlanta can offer them that pick. And they now have Jalen Johnson. They have Dyson Daniels. They have Zachary Ricochet to be able to offer in a deal. Like, they have a lot of pieces that I would want if I was Milwaukee, if I was looking at a Giannis deal, which, to be clear, again, nobody is looking for a Giannis. It feels like nobody's looking for a Giannis deal right now.
Keywords in that sentence you just said were right now. I have some thoughts about, and you're more informed than me, so maybe that's your right now is much more important than my right now. I just have some thoughts on what Milwaukee's done so far that isn't a desperate, we must do everything to keep Giannis. Look, I tend to think Houston, if they wanted to, they could beat an Atlanta offer, but you're right in that 2026 Bucks pick is probably the most valuable asset because you get control over your draft for a year. And yeah, they become a very fascinating Giannis team if they want to make an even bigger home run swing, which, look, my whole thought with any Giannis sweepstakes that might pop up is that why would he leave Milwaukee? It's especially why would he leave the Eastern Conference? You're telling me he gets to stay in the Eastern Conference and gets to play with Trae Young? It's it's a scary thought. We'll see what eventually happens over the next couple of weeks if there becomes any type of sweepstakes to that end.
Yeah. And someone asked in the comments, what's the salary going out in a Giannis deal? I believe that Jalen Johnson being at 30 and Ricochet being at 13 gets you pretty damn close now in terms of the money that you have to send out. So it's actually like pretty doable financially for them to be able to do a Giannis deal as well.